Ian Huntley. On August 4th, 2002, 10-year-olds Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman were attending a family barbecue at Holly's house. At around 6:15 p.m., the two girls left without telling their parents, supposedly to buy some sweets from a vending machine. They walked through the quiet streets of Soham, England, and that was the last time they were ever seen alive. The missing girls case became huge news and received nationwide media attention. That's when this man, Ian Huntley, inserted himself into the investigation. He spoke with reporters and gave multiple interviews, claiming that he had been the last person to see them alive, and that the girls had walked past his house. This was one of the many interviews that he gave.
I don't know the girls. I stood on the front doorstep grooming my dog down. She'd run away and come back a bit of a mess. They just came across and asked how Miss Carr was, as she used to teach them at St Andrews. I just said she weren't very good, as she hadn't got the job. And they just said, please tell her that we're very sorry. And off they walked in the direction of the library over there.
Huntley worked as a caretaker at the girls' school, and his girlfriend, Maxine Carr, was their teaching assistant. Investigators started to get suspicious of Ian's body language. He seemed uneasy, fumbling his words and displaying visible signs of stress. What made things even more disturbing was what Huntley was doing behind the scenes. While the entire town was desperately searching for Holly and Jessica, he was obsessively cleaning his home and his car. It wasn't until 2 weeks later that the horrifying truth was uncovered. The bodies of Holly and Jessica were found dumped in a ditch about 12 miles away from Soham. Due to the decomposition, it was impossible to determine exactly how they had been killed, but forensic experts strongly believed they had been asphyxiated. When the police searched Huntley's home, they found burned fragments of the girls' clothes in his trash bin. Even more damning, fibers from their clothes were discovered in both his house and his car. The evidence was overwhelming. Huntley was arrested, and his girlfriend, Maxine Carr, was also taken into custody after it was revealed that she had lied to give him an alibi. Carr wasn't present during the crime, but she played a role in covering for Huntley. When questioned by police, she claimed that she had been with him on the night of the disappearance, but in reality, she was out of town visiting family. This is a disturbing interview she gave, where at one point she was even seen laughing, and referred to the girls in the past tense when everyone was still searching for them.
Very pretty girls, very lovely girls, but Holly was more of the... Oh, what's up? Sorry. Yeah. Even worse. Thank God.
She later admitted to lying, but claimed that she had no idea what Huntley had done. Whether or not she truly knew the full extent of his crimes remains unknown, but her false alibi helped him avoid suspicions in the early days of the investigation. What makes this case even more disturbing is that Huntley should have never been in a position to be around children in the first place. Before the murders, he had a long history of inappropriate behavior with young girls. Multiple accusations of inappropriate assault and harassment had been made against him over the years, but due to lack of convictions, he was allowed to work in a school. Because of this, many believed that these crimes were not just about killing. As it turns out, when the girls passed Ian's home, he called out to them. Huntley likely used his connection to Maxine Carr to gain their trust. He told them that Carr was inside and invited them in, but once they stepped through the door, they were never seen alive again. In 2003, Ian Huntley was convicted of 2 counts of murder and sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 40 years. Maxine Carr was convicted of preventing the course of justice and served just 21 months before being released. She was given a new identity and remains under government protection to this day. She underwent cosmetic surgery to change her appearance and is believed to have been relocated to many different cities for her own protection, since the public saw her as pure evil. All of this was paid with taxpayer money, making the public outrage for defending her even bigger. The Soham murders led to significant legal changes in the UK, including stricter background checks for people working with children. Today, Huntley remains behind bars, even having attempted to end himself multiple times while in prison, unsuccessfully. This case remains as one of the most chilling examples of a predator hiding in plain sight. A man who worked in a school, entrusted with the safety of children, turned out to be a monster all along. But what makes it even more disturbing is how he confidently spoke to the media, pretending to be concerned when, in reality, he knew the horrifying truth. Matthew Haverly. On June 8, 2018, residents of a town in Pennsylvania woke up to shocking news. A body had been discovered in a creek near a quiet rural road. The discovery was made by a passing truck driver who noticed a large black bag in the water and called authorities. Police arrived at the scene and began an investigation, but before they could release any details, local news crews had already started gathering footage. A reporter from a local TV station approached a man who lived nearby, looking for a reaction from someone in the community. That man was Matthew Haverly, and this was his interview.
I'm like, what the hell's going on? And now I realize that's what they were actually doing. I had no clue. It's sad to say that that's someone's either daughter, mother, whatever, both, child. I think it was kind of a hit and something happened. Something went bad, and this is like a rural area, so they just wanted to plant the body somewhere else besides wherever the hell they were from.
Haverly lives across the street from where the body was found. When Newswatch 16 asked him again what he thought, Haverly continued to talk about mob or gang-related killings.
It would be like a place where people from the city would want to put a body because most likely they wouldn't be found.
Haverly also spoke about his mother's possible reaction to troopers finding a body near their home.
I'm guessing like my mother, she would be concerned. And probably a lot of the other neighbors would be concerned.
At no point did he appear nervous or concerned, just an average neighbor reacting to the crime like everybody else. But what neither the reporter nor the viewers at home knew at the time was that Haverly wasn't just a bystander. He was the killer. The body found in the creek was his 67-year-old mother, Patricia Haverly, and as he stood there discussing theories about who might have done it, police were already beginning to suspect the truth. Haverly's casual interview quickly raised red flags. Investigators started looking into his recent activities, and what they found was alarming. Evidence inside his home showed signs of a violent struggle, and forensic teams discovered bloodstains and other traces linking him to the crime. Later that day, Haverly was taken into custody, and after questioning, he finally confessed. He admitted to beating his own mother to death, placing her body in a bag, and dumping it in the creek near his house. His exact motive remains unclear, but some reports suggest it was due to a heated argument that escalated into violence. Matthew Haverly had a history of struggling with mental health and had spent time overseas in the military, so even though it's not confirmed, this could have potentially been a case of PTSD. He was charged with criminal homicide and abuse of a corpse. He later pleaded guilty and was sentenced to prison for the murder of his own mother. He was given a sentence of 3.5 to 14 years. The case quickly gained national attention, not just because of the crime itself, but because of his eerie interview, where he spoke about the victim as if he had nothing to do with it. Watching the footage now, it's chilling to realize that he was just standing there, talking to the news, knowing full well that the body they had found was his own mother's. Kaisha Abrahams. On August 1st, 2010, in Sydney, Australia, Christy Abrahams called police to report that her 6-year-old daughter, Kaisha Abrahams, was missing from home. According to her, Kaisha had been tucked into bed the night before, but when she went to check on her the next morning, she was gone. There were no signs of forced entry, but the front door was reportedly left unlocked.
Hi, I've just gotten up and I went to the toilet and realised that my front door was open and my daughter's not here.
Okay, what's your address?
It's 15, stroke 342, Woodstock Avenue, Mount George.
Okay. You just get the police on their way out there, okay? How old is your daughter?
She's 6.
She's 6?
As soon as the news broke, the public was gripped by the heartbreaking case. Posters with Kaisha's face were plastered everywhere, and massive search efforts were launched. Christy and her partner Robert Smith stood in front of the cameras, pleading for Kaisha's safe return.
Can't describe how it's been. You don't know until you put yourself in my shoes. Just hope that she's found as soon as possible. That's what we need. Safe and well.
How hard is it for you the longer this goes?
It gets harder by the minute. She's always happy, bubbly, you know, loved playing, you know, just like any kid would.
Bob, do you have any idea that anyone who you might know who may have taken Christy? Does the family obviously thought about long and hard about this? Does anyone have any idea?
I have no idea. If I had any idea, mate, we'd be there looking.
But later, as investigators looked deeper, their stories didn't add up. After she called police, Christy's friend, Allison Anderson, who really wanted to help, asked her if she had anyone in mind as far as the suspect. Christy allegedly responded saying she suspected Kaisha's biological father, Chris Whippert. She said he had rode past her house last week, making a gun sign with his fingers to her current partner, Rob. Even though Allison urged her to tell this to the police, she never did. Police found no evidence that Kaisha had been abducted. The unlocked front door theory didn't make sense, and there were no eyewitnesses who had seen or heard anything unusual. Then, suspicions deepened when it was discovered that Kaisha had been absent from school for weeks before her disappearance, but her family never reported her missing until that morning in August. On top of that, the little girl's blood had been found on several parts of the house when it was searched. Authorities then shifted their focus onto Christy Abrahams and Robert Smith. Their behavior became increasingly suspicious, with Christy seemingly more interested in media attention than finding her daughter. And when asked about the blood, this was her answer.
Would there be any reason why there'd be more blood, not just in her unit, but throughout the unit?
What are you trying to say?
I'm just saying that when we forensically examined the unit, there's an amount of Kaisha's blood throughout the unit. And I'm just trying to ask you how that would have got there.
I don't know.
No? Okay.
As time went on, public sympathy began turning into doubt. Then, a major break in the case changed everything. After months of investigation, police secretly placed Christy Abrahams and Robert Smith under surveillance. In April 2011, they followed them to a remote bushland in western Sydney. What they witnessed next was chilling. Christy and Robert were seen visiting a shallow grave where human remains were buried on the girl's 1-year anniversary. The couple was immediately arrested, and Christy eventually confessed. Kaisha had died almost a month before she was ever reported missing. She admitted to beating her daughter unconscious one night in July 2010 after the child refused to put on her pajamas. She had even broken her jaw. Instead of seeking medical help, she left Kaisha in her room overnight, only to discover the next morning that she was dead. In an attempt to cover up the crime, Christy and Robert kept Kaisha's body in their home for days before finally dumping her remains in the bushland and setting the area on fire. When learning about Christy's past, things start to make sense even more. She had been a victim of domestic abuse from her father as a child. Her mother, who suffered from epilepsy, had passed away from a seizure in front of her, and since her father didn't want custody of her after that, she was put up in an orphanage along with her brother. She had been showing more troubling behavior when she would allegedly punch her own stomach after an argument while being pregnant, and to top it off, her firstborn son had passed away from unknown causes. As if all of this wasn't bad enough, it later came out that Kaisha had been physically abused for years before her passing, with nurses claiming to have seen bruises and cigarette burn marks on her. In 2013, Christy Abrahams pleaded guilty to murder and was sentenced to at least 16 years in prison. Robert Smith, who helped cover up the crime, was sentenced to 12 years for being an accessory. The case remains as one of Australia's most tragic examples of family abuse and deception. Watching old footage of Christy's emotional pleas, it's disturbing to know that she was lying the entire time. While the community came together hoping for Kaisha's safe return, her own mother had done the unthinkable.